What's up, y'all? You're now listening to the What Now podcast. I'm Dr. Spencer Dupre, owner of Empower Chiropractic.
And I am Dr. Zach Thompson, owner of Within Chiropractic. The purpose of this podcast is to document and share the experiences of two young business owners as we open our own brick and mortar chiropractic practices. Join along as we discuss all of our wins, our losses, insights, and the many, many lessons we learned.
As a disclaimer, none of this is ever intended to be medical, legal, or financial advice. Yo, what is up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the What Now podcast. I am Spencer. As you guys may have known by now, I got my boy, Zach.
What it do?
And we are joined today by
Alpha and Omega Chiropractic out of Keller, Texas. Two of my really good friends. One might be a better than friend. My girlfriend, Morgan Himango, and her business partner, her best friend, Hannah Traweek, are in the building. Sorry, Dr. Morgan Himango and Dr. Hannah Traweek, owners of Alpha and Omega Chiropractic, are joining us to discuss all things business, pediatric chiropractic, and owning a business with your best friend. So super pumped to have them. Morgan and Hannah both graduated from Parker University in December of 2021. And I'm able to say that off the top of my head without a bio because we were all in the same class. Morgan went to Texas A&M, whoop. And then her business partner, Hannah, went to the University of Arkansas. So she is a Razorback. We won't hold it against her, but they are been in practice now officially today as we are recording, celebrating their 1-year anniversary or birthday, whichever they prefer. So big excite for them. I was able to be at their birthday party on Friday, and it was super awesome to see their community come about. They serve as their niche market, pediatric and prenatal patients all over the North Tarrant County. And so we're just super excited to dive into anything that comes to mind today. As you know, we don't follow a script, so please allow me to introduce Dr. Morgan and Dr. Hannah.
Well, hello. Thank you guys for having us.
Yeah, we're excited.
It's a warm welcome.
We're
And
super excited to have y'all. Yeah. So go ahead, Spence. Go ahead.
No, you got it. You lead. You're the horse.
All right. So, I mean, right off the jump, I think the first question a lot of our listeners would want to know from two people that were in the same class, how did y'all decide, or when was that decision made to go into business together? And work us through that origin story, if you don't mind.
For sure.
so we had become fast friends during chiropractic school, try one. We tell the story quite a bit. I was kind of creepy and went up to her and wanted her to play volleyball. So we were fast friends. And so it was during our 5th trimester that the world kind of shut down a little bit. And so we officially went online due to COVID. And we had gone from seeing our friend group every single waking moment of the day to not seeing one another. I think it was close to 2 months. So we didn't see each other. And Hannah came down for Memorial Day.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So Hannah came down for Memorial Day, and we were able to, like, during that time away, really get some like good perspective on what we wanted our practices and our futures to really look like.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we both had like a light bulb moment at the same time. And that's when you came to me.
Yeah. So starting, I think we went to our first knew that we wanted to open a business like right after graduation. And then just moving through chiropractic school, the conversation of like, we really want to go open a practice after school, but we also want to have lives and we want to be moms. And that was a really big priority for both of us. And so that was kind of always I don't know, it always felt like it was an option. And then, I think it was later in chiropractic school when I was like, hey, you want to just do this together? We have all of these
aligning beliefs and really similar visions as to what we wanted our practice to look like. And we wanted to cultivate something really similar. And we had gone through this entire chiropractic school experience together. and in like this team-based mentality. And so I think that as we got more clarity, once we got closer to graduation, that was something we both craved. And we knew that we could buy ourselves some flexibility with like having a family and not having to put the practice at stake necessarily to have that family that we wanted to have. So that's really,
it definitely like we had a ton of conversations about it before we like officially decided that was what we wanted to do. Like we probably talked about it for like a year before we were like, okay, we're doing it. Like, I think it was try 7, like we were in clinic and we were like, yep, we're doing this. So that's kind of when the planning like officially started, but it was 2 years of like, is this going to be like the best thing for us to do?
for sure.
Yeah. So like I think a lot of times, like a lot of our listeners like really like to focus in like the nitty gritty, like startup moment, because like everybody has this like analysis paralysis and like fear of the startup. So kind of like walk us through like what were some of those conversations that you guys were having in that year between your startup, and then how did you guys like collaborate to come up like with Alpha and Omega? Like, where did that come from? Like, what is you guys' brand? Like, what are your values? And how did you guys like come to common terms like on those things and be able to like, it's one thing to kind of agree with each other and be like, yeah, this is what we like, but how do you guys like go from that and being friends, be like, oh yeah, we like all these things, to like put it on paper, and then getting the ball actually rolling?
Yeah, for sure. I think like the biggest conversation, like the first thing we talked about was where we wanted to be, like location wise, because Morgan really wanted to come out to like Roanoke area. And I grew up in Allen. So like I didn't really have like a preference of where I wanted to land necessarily, but I did kind of have like, that was where I grew up. So that was the biggest thing that we had to like come to terms with, like, was I willing to like be open to like a different location? And I was. So
yeah. So that was that first like just kind of intro conversation. Like, let's not get into the nitty gritty unless we can come to an agreement on where we want to be geographically, because I wasn't going to force her to live in a suburb that she didn't like, and I didn't want to be. I knew I had pretty good clarity in the area that I wanted to be in, and so that helped us really in those drives from the Parker area to like Keller. We did Keller, South Lake, Grapevine, Roanoke, and Argyle. We drove through. And if you've driven around DFW, you know that takes quite a bit of time. And so during those car drives, we talked about, what do we want it to, let's visualize it. What do we want our practice to look like? And then we're both visual learners. And so once we got a good grasp of what we wanted it to look like, we were able to really get down into like, what are the values that we want our practice to have? Who do we want to attract into our office? What are the people that we want to attract into our office enjoy? Because we wanted to make this a place where people wanted to be, even if they didn't quite get the chiropractic thing quite yet. Because once you can create a magnet in that sense, then you draw in the right people. And so we had a lot of those conversations. And then we looked at a ton of practices. Like, do we like this? Do we like that? Do we want to, branding and all that kind of stuff was pretty fun for us. We got it really nerdy into Canva pretty quick.
Yeah. I think the first thing like we did for our business, well, before creating the name, and we'll tell that story too, but the first thing we did was create the website. I remember that. So yeah, the branding
awesome.
came really early on, but yeah.
So let's kind of, I know it's been a lot longer than just a year, but I'm sure our listeners are thinking, okay, well, they're talking about their visualization and the people they wanted to attract. Can you guys walk us through that process a little more in depth? And maybe if it has evolved over the last year and a half, what did it start out as, and what is it now, and how has it been building that visualization into real life?
Yeah. So we both really liked the idea of being in an old house, and we are in an old house. So that ended up being like coming true. But it's funny, like when we first started looking for a space, like there really isn't too many options, especially when you have like a budget and you have a very specific like vision for what you want your space to be. There's not a ton. And so we learned that really fast, but we got really fortunate because our space like came available.
We looked at it the day it came available
Yeah.
on accident. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I think that the hard part about getting really into the nitty gritty with our conversations is we never really came to conversations with one another with much of an outline. So it was always really organic. And so we
Open-minded.
Yeah, we had a good, or we say good, we had no idea what we actually needed to do to start a business. Let's be very clear.
Yeah, don't we all?
We thought we had an idea, and we've over the year been like really humbled almost every single day about that, and maybe even multiple times a day. But we knew general topics in which we wanted to make sure that we touched on. And so just being friends, that kind of came organically, that we were already in those conversations with one another. And if I saw something on Instagram that I really liked, I would send it to Hannah, and then we would talk about it the next time we saw one another. And people just along the way gave us different things. Like you always hear, like, what is your mission statement? What are your what are your values? What's your vision for your practice? And so we knew those were a couple of things that we needed to discuss. But I would definitely say that like we didn't have a checklist in any sort when it came to what we needed to actually tackle to visualize and like brand our practice. It just came together by learning and realizing day of that we might need something and going from there. So I wish we had really good, like detailed step-by-step things. I mean, of course, it was like create a name, get an LLC, have a bank account. But other than that, we didn't really have too much direction or pointed direction other
Very
than
much
we wanted to open.
Very much school of hard knocks, and kind of being the oops moment, which I'm sure all four of us have experienced, where it's like, oops, I didn't know I was going to need that today.
Oh man.
And then you just go figure it out. So going off that, like, how has it been now in the, I guess more of the operation standpoint? How has it been with delegating tasks to one another, or, you know, hey, the phone rang, or replying to emails? Like, what does that look like being two very strong, educated, like very self-empowered women? Like, how does that go about delegating tasks?
Yeah, that was probably our biggest area of, I wouldn't want to say concern, but uncertainty when we stepped into practice, just because we looked for similar practices that we could take mentorship from, and we really struggled to find two friend chiropractors practicing 50-50 owners of a business that weren't married. And we're not married. So that's a very different like dynamic. And I mad kudos and respect to people that are married and work with their like partner. But we didn't have a ton of clarity what that was going to look like. We just knew that I had a lot of skin in the game. She had a lot of skin in the game, and I knew her character. I don't want to speak for you, but I felt like she knew mine. And so we knew that we were going to give 100% no matter what, to make sure what we did was as successful as possible. And so we came in with an operating agreement that we would do everything 50-50. So I would try to adjust 50% of our practice members. She would try to do 50% of the business work, etc., until a year. And then if we felt like it wasn't working, then we would reevaluate. And I would say that so far it has been working. Yeah. It's definitely like you can't look too deep into it, because if you're always trying to keep score, in my opinion, like, oh, I did 2 exams today and you did 1. And you can find flaws if you're looking for flaws, but really what good is that going to do for, first of all, our just friendship and second of all, the business.
Yeah, and it really comes down to there's so much more. I mean, you guys know this too. There's so much more that goes into owning a business other than like being a chiropractor, you know? So like the emails and the DMs and the follow-ups and everything, like we just do what we can and we both put all of our effort in. And like I have my days off and Morgan has her days off too, but like we pick each other up, and like I feel like that's what really makes us like awesome business partners at the end of the day, because we're both giving 100% all the time instead of 50-50, right?
Yeah. One thing I know, having, you know, obviously a more inside scoop into y'all's practice, seeing as how I'm with Morgan quite a bit, is something that I think y'all have implemented, I don't know, in the last 3 or 4 months. And I'd much rather y'all explain this, but when you guys opened up on Fridays, one of y'all like is in the office on Friday, but then that Tuesday or something, the other person is doing like social media, or like, what does that look like, and how has that been for y'all in a delegation standpoint?
Yeah, no, that worked really good. We're not super consistent, you know, with like you do this and I do this, but yeah, I mean, it definitely takes some of the pressure off. I feel like social media is so hard too, because like sometimes you're feeling really creative and other times you're not. And so that's where I felt like doing social media shifts was hard, because sometimes like I just wasn't feeling it, you know? But yeah, no, that we did that because we were just feeling a little burned out with all the different things that we had to keep up with. And so to try to like split it up a little bit where it didn't feel like we had to do social media all the time or.
Yeah, I would say that we've done really good with making sure that we've only worked on a Friday together since we implemented that once. And it was when we had the ice storm. And so we moved pretty much everybody Monday to Thursday to Friday. And so we were both needed in the office that Friday. So we've done decent at like maintaining that integrity of Fridays being one person. And I feel like that's really given both of us a good time to spend with family or go on vacation, and you can plan your schedule a little bit more thoughtfully in that sense. But the Tuesday social media like shift was really created to, there's a common misconception. It's that when there's two people in a partnership, you're doing 50-50 of the work. So you're doing half. And we found that we were both doing the same work. It was just doubled, because I would create an Instagram post. Hannah would proofread it. Hannah would listen to a podcast. I would have to listen to the podcast just to make sure that we are both consuming the same information and like staying up to date with one another. So we found that instead of, I don't want to say that we wanted to half the work, but instead of creating like a delegated, like I could delegate to her, we were just increasing the work for one another. And so we haven't done as good with the shifts lately, but we have done better at, okay, she's going to tackle these posts this week because she created that on the social media calendar or whatever it was. And then I'll tackle this because this is more in my wheelhouse. And so as you progress in business in general, you kind of learn what you're naturally good at and what's going to easily flow, and things that might be a little bit more of a sticking point. And with a partnership, you always hope that your sticking point is their strong suit. And so we figured that out a little bit better, I would say.
Yeah, I will say like we have learned, I mean, we play to each other's strengths, right? So like I really love spreadsheets and numbers and things like that. Very like organization, like minded. And so I kind of like, you know, handle all the data and like the numbers and keeping like stats and stuff, because that is my jam. And Morgan is definitely a little bit more creative, and like she likes the social media side a little bit more. So she handles that a little bit more. And that's not saying that she doesn't help me and I don't help her. Like we're both doing it. But like in terms of like, we kind of take control on that side a little bit more.
Basically, like in a bind, if numbers need to get punched, it's most likely going to be Hannah. And then if you need to create a social media post, Morgan. Yeah, cool.
Yeah.
That's awesome. That's really good.
That's actually exactly what I was about to ask you guys, like to kind of roll into the next topic is you know, you come into like you're in school and you feel like you know someone and you spend all this time and you feel like you really know somebody, and then but really going into practice you spend all the time with everyone and you get to see like really who each other is. And like, so how has your friendship evolved like now that it's included the business partnership? And then what are some of the strengths and weaknesses that you've noticed like in yourself, and like where do you feel like you cover each other's blind spots? And then like as a combo, like where do you feel like both of you guys are lacking? So like when you make that hire, like what are you guys looking for like to add to your team?
Yeah, for sure. I'll start off on the friendship topic. That was a really big concern for us, or not concern, but it was a big thing that we were putting a lot of energy into, is that we wanted to remain friends. You hear horror stories, and of course everybody is quick to tell you about the bad things, but that, hey, you're not going to like each other in a year, or just all sorts of things. And so we wanted to make sure that that friendship was maintained, because we knew if we're friends, then we would be good business partners. But we weren't so sure if we were good business partners that we would still be good friends to one another. And so we've tried to maintain that friendship. There's been a couple of times where we've sat back and been like, how long has it been since we've spent time with one another? And that wasn't intentionally for A&O. And that's typically when, I wouldn't say that we're feeling tension with one another in the office, but definitely those moments where we're feeling a little bit more stress within the dynamic of our partnership. Here is when we aren't like being intentional about spending time with friends or as a friend. And so that was something that was really big for us. And so definitely our friendship has changed. We don't spend as much time as just friends anymore, because we get a DM on Instagram and then we're immediately talking about business again, and it goes from catching up on whatever hot gossip, which was none these days, to business. So it's just like the ebbs and flows, and realizing that we can talk about life with one another whenever, but like still prioritizing knowing what's going on in her life and her knowing what's going on with me.
Yeah. A lot of it is like intertwined too. Like, you know, when we're not seeing patients, she's catching me up with things with her, and I'm catching her up with things with me. But yeah, a lot of it is like having to be intentional. Like, hey, we haven't like hung out in a while. Like, let's do that. And let's not talk about business. Like, let's set some boundaries here so that we can focus on our friendship, outside of our business. So that it has been a challenge, but I feel like we're like navigating it really well. Obviously, she's still my bestie. So
1 year down.
yeah.
And so, and then what strengths and weaknesses? Were we talking about individual strengths and weaknesses?
Yeah, like what have you guys learned about yourself from the other person? Like, you know, I mean, you go into business and you're like, well, I guess I'm gonna have to wear all these hats. And then like naturally, as you guys play into your roles, like you're naturally going to amplify like your own strengths. And so like you'll like really start to notice those, you know. So what have you guys each learned about yourself in this last year of business? You know, maybe not necessarily because we talked about like the inter dynamic between you guys, but like what have you learned individually about yourself?
Yeah, I definitely have one. So starting out, Morgan and I went to an epic seminar. It was just like a business seminar, and we were out of school already. And it was at that seminar that I realized that Morgan was a way better networker than I was. And that's definitely something that I've gotten way better at. And like, I've definitely grown in that this year. But yeah, putting myself like out there, you definitely have to do that. If you're a business owner, you have to go up and talk to people, and you have to talk about yourself and your business. And like, I knew that, but when we were together, I definitely let Morgan like take the ropes on that. And yeah, that was definitely a weakness of mine. But you know, as we've been in business, you have to do it, and you do it so much that you get better at it. And I feel like that's a lot of things. That's with a lot of things in business, but yeah, that was definitely a weakness of mine for sure.
Yeah, which I mean is definitely something that you notice quickly and like came back from that seminar and quickly like started implementing small things that she could be doing daily that didn't feel like, oh my gosh, this is the most anxiety inducing thing I've ever experienced. And so then you were able to walk into rooms of people that you did not know and not feel like it was the worst thing that's ever happened to you.
Yeah.
And so that's important, like
I've
doing
come a long
small
way.
things.
Well, we're just because I know it's something Spencer and I talk a lot about, and I'm very pro networking, especially in today's day and age where I think everyone wants to build their business on social media. I think there's a lot of power in networking when trying to become an authority in your community. What were some of those small things that you can share with our listeners that you started to add into your daily routine that really helped in becoming more confident in networking?
Yeah, I mean, I think just saying yes to like anything and just going. That was like the biggest thing for me, was like, it's gonna be uncomfortable and I'm not gonna like it. But if I just go and I just keep putting myself out there, keep being uncomfortable, eventually it will be more comfortable. And so that was like the biggest thing for me. And then also like nail your elevator speech, because you're gonna give it 1,000 times.
So many times.
Let's hear it.
Also-
Let's hear the elevator speech. On the
no.
spot. On the
No,
spot.
Actually, I think that would be really good, like because you guys each like own, well, like you have 100% ownership of 50% of the business, right? Like on paper. And so, but you guys are totally different people and have different personalities. And so the way that you perceive the business is going to be different. And the verbiage and the adjectives that you use to describe your business are just going to come from a different place. So like, I actually would like to hear how you guys describe your practice, like from each end. It doesn't have to be like a super elevator speech, but like if somebody says like, what do you guys do? Like, what do each of you say? Because it's going to be different, but it's the same thing, right? Like same, but different.
And just so our listeners know, they are both very red and nervous right now. No, I'm just kidding. They're doing just fine. They're doing just fine.
That's not true.
I just tell people that we're a family wellness practice and we love seeing like pregnant moms, and we serve pediatric too, and we get that a lot, like asking what's a pediatric chiropractor. And so then I kind of go into my spiel about being more wellness, and then I touch on the nervous system too.
Yeah. I say that we're nervous system based chiropractors that really focus on cultivating a community and of like-minded people that have similar beliefs and similar goals. And so, because I mean, I love what we do. I love being a chiropractor, but I also think that as chiropractors, sometimes we miss the element that we see them about, a tiny percentage of the time that they're on this entire, I hate using the word journey because I'm not on The Bachelor, but this journey
I love that for your journey.
This holistic lifestyle, right? And so if we can empower these people to start to educate themselves in our office and outside of our office, that's when there's going to be radical change. And I don't want to be there, and we don't find any value in being their only source of this information. And then if they decide to leave our office or something comes up or we have families, then they're cut off from this source of information and like new life in like this new perceived world, right? And so that's a big part for us, is like creating those connections and community that goes with our chiropractic office. And that's part of the reason why we wanted to be in a house, and it goes way back to that.
Yeah, we talk about all the time, like especially looking back, you know, through our first year, about how like it's been so awesome, but a lot of our practice members call us friends and we call them friends. And so that's almost more like rewarding than I think anything else this year.
Yeah, for sure.
That's really special. Really, I don't think there's many businesses in general that get to say that their quote unquote customers are their friends. And so that's really, really awesome to hear. How do you guys feel, sticking kind of in that networking realm? How have you guys created those connections within the community that have really bolstered your practice members' ability to, you know, find more education and things like that?
Yeah, I think, I mean, networking in person is, to be really honest, going back to like a little bit touching on weaknesses, is something that I do not feel like I have done to my best ability. And it's not something that we have placed at like the highest forefront in our like our focus.
Mhm.
And it's something that we definitely could put more energy to. But creating we live in like a social world now, in a very interconnected world.
Mhm.
And I mean, let's be real. I go into some place, I see somebody I know, or like meet this new person. I connect with them at the front desk through their check-in process, and then XYZ. And then I might see that they have an Aggie ring on, and I make that connection. And then I leave the office and I go and I look at them on Instagram or Facebook. So creating this like ability where people can feel connected to you and find small tangible things when they're in person that they can follow up with you with, and you can follow up with them on, like, doesn't have to be their pain. It doesn't have to be their GI issues. Like, please don't make it their GI issues. Like, they don't want to talk about that anymore, most likely. But having something that you can connect on a very human level, and then they take that to, like, most of the time people go follow us on our personal Instagrams, and then they start interacting with us personally as well. And just being open to that like conversation, because that's where those like relationships happen, and those like deeper connections and deeper questions really come out, as most of the time we've noticed on like a personal level. Like, people reach out to her or to me, and then we're able to provide them with resources through our office and together. That makes sense.
No, that totally makes sense. I mean, we serve based like pretty much the same population. I feel like you guys are maybe a little bit more focused on like female and women's health, and my niche and like my like passion point is really the kids, which is why I was interested to hear like what do you guys say about your practice, because I say the same thing, and we both run very similar systems. And I always say like we're a pediatric focused chiropractic office, and our whole job is to help kids live happy, healthy lives, and we like especially have a heart for kids with sensory processing challenges, like and so like that's what I like really, really, really love to serve. So it's totally different, but at the same time, it's both of our communities are very like connection driven, and people don't really want you to come up to them and be like, hey, your kid looks sick, or you look real pregnant, I think you should come and let me pop your back. People really want to feel like connected with, and like the reason that they like make choices like to come and see you is because like you care about them as a person. You know, I have people calling all the time like asking about hey, do you take my insurance? And I always say like, no, we don't take your insurance. And I was like, but I know there's a guy up the road, like this is what he does, blah blah blah, and he will take your insurance. And then usually they're like, well, how much is it to schedule with you? Like, thanks so much for giving me this thing. And I'm like, well, like you're totally welcome to come into the office if you would like, but we don't take your insurance. And so really it's like placing the value in your brand, in your connection, and like giving people the certainty that you are the right person for them rather than just being the cheapest option. I think it's super important for that, and especially for like a family-based like pediatrics brand. And I think you guys do an awesome job of doing that.
Thank you.
I think too, on the topic of brand, I'm sure if listeners haven't by now gone and searched y'all on Instagram, y'all have a great feed. And the way, I mean, I have tried to work Canva, and I stink at it.
Yeah, it's way better than mine too.
Canva is not like I mean, for some practices, the end all be all. Y'all have a great mixture of Canva and pictures and videos. And so one question that I have gotten from my colleagues and peers and friends that at least follow Morgan, but also the practices, and this is more geared towards Morgan, but I think it applies to you as well, Hannah, is, you know, people will say, how did Morgan get so natural at being in front of the camera? Like, it seems so easy for her. And so that's a question I wanted to pose back to you, because I've never really asked you that.
It's me. I'm Zach's friend asking that, by the way.
Yes.
Well, first off, thank you to whoever thinks that. I appreciate you guys. And it goes back to a little bit of what we were kind of touching on with Hannah is those really small, when you can put yourself in a platform and in a situation where you feel a little bit uncomfortable. So I felt 0% comfortable on camera. The first time, I have a very distinct memory of it. It was during COVID. I had started my beauty counter business, and I was going to tell all 14 followers that I had on my beauty counter Instagram about it. And I was anxious about it the entire day. And I got ready, did full face makeup, did my hair, closed myself in my bathroom, my parents' bathroom door, because it was like the most soundproof place in the home, because I wanted nobody to hear me, because I was so uncomfortable about it. And I probably filmed my 15-second why 45 times. I was sweating, like actually sweating. And I was talking to 14 people, and realistically, 5 of them were my family, and 1 of them was Hannah. So really, I had no reason to be nervous, but being able to be vulnerable with 14 people taught me to be vulnerable with 40 people. And then 40 people became not as scary. And then I was able to speak to 200 people really comfortably. And I say 200 people through a camera because I got used to that and I did it frequently. And so it became more natural for me. And then that was a skill, which I was really thankful that I was able to transfer from that network marketing, digital, like marketing and sales into our like chiropractic business. And I'd be lying if I said that that wasn't intentional. That was not intentional. I knew that that was a skill that I needed to develop. And I knew that social media was going to be a huge thing for our practice. And neither one of us had either like any sort of experience in that. Because I mean, I was a professional student for 7.5 years. Yeah. Who was I doing digital marketing for? Right. And so I knew that I needed that skill and needed a little bit more familiarity. And so I did really bad at Canva, but I did use Canva for 3 years before we ever started our business. And so it's that familiarity aspect of putting yourself in those situations before you have that big moment where you need to be prepared, because I would have been sweating major bullets posting about A&O for the first time if I hadn't have done the small things before.
It definitely is a skill, and just like any other skill, it takes practice. And so that's just, you know, we do it every day. And so now it's like just become natural and like just a normal skill that we have. So
yeah. And it's something that we've actually both talked about, is creating personal. I mean, the greatest example of this is Dr. Courtney Kayla. She has created the most insane personal brand I've probably ever seen. She's an absolute marketing genius naturally. She created this platform in which she became super polarizing, which is one of the best things that you can do on social media to create this like kind of cult following. Yeah. And so we've talked about just like, how can we create, I mean, and that feeds her practice. I mean, her practice is marketed via Courtney, not our well house. She does an insane job. If you do not follow them and you're listening to this podcast and you're interested in family or pediatric and prenatal wellness, definitely go check her out. Yeah. But we've talked about creating a personal brand that can one day fuel our practices, because that's one of the most, like, I don't want to say simple ways, but it's one of the most authentic ways that people can connect with you and connect with your office. And so it's something that we put effort towards outside of the effort that we put towards our business.
Yeah, that's very true. And that's a lot of big things coming down the pipe for you guys. And on that topic, as we kind of wrap things up, you know, we talk about like, this is practice, right? And like some things are really hard at the beginning, and they get easier and they become more automatic. And the thing that fuels growth is putting yourself in those uncomfortable situations. Like Zach and I talk about that all the time. So as you guys are growing, as you guys are scaling, as you guys are continuing to develop the brand, what is like, where are you guys, what's next for you guys? What's coming down the road for y'all? What are y'all working on? And what can we be expecting out of Alpha and Omega coming up in the future?
Yeah.
Great question.
Yeah, we actually sat down the other day and we were like, okay, what are we going to do when our lease is up? So we're brainstorming. We are thinking about what we want to do. We've bounced around the idea of like a wellness center in the next 5 years-ish. And then we also would like to maybe get into digital courses. So that could be a potential project in the near future as well.
Yeah, those are definitely two things that we're focused. Digital courses would probably be something that is the next year or so that we'd be looking at. Obviously, a wellness center, we're a little bit capped in our current lease at we're about 1,500 square feet, and we could probably fit one more person into our office to like practice out of it. But other than that, we are a little bit capped just resource and space wise. So that wouldn't happen until our lease is up in 4 years. But short term, we are going to be hiring a full-time CA.
Yeah.
So
Nice.
we have we had a part-time CA for a little bit there. And she actually left. She got a good job and a good opportunity for her. And so we're happy for her there. But we're kind of back to the drawing board, and it's given us a little bit of clarity. I mean, you're never a boss until you're a boss. And so you don't know exactly what you're looking for in the hiring process until you do it. And we knew that we were walking in with weaknesses and flaws when it came to hiring and just being like in leadership in that role. And so we're definitely looking for somebody that's full-time so that they can be fully invested in our practices, and because we are too. And that's something that we expect out of our like future employee. And so that would definitely be like our hopefully soon next step is that full-time CA. And then like down the pipeline, starting families and stuff like that, we would love to bring somebody else onto our practice, another chiropractor that's really passionate about serving their community. So awesome. Those are the next 4 years. Can't believe we're already 1 year through our lease. But those are a few things that hopefully are in
the future.
In the future for us.
That's really cool. That's really cool. And then I just have two really quick. I know we're getting to the end here, but I have two almost rapid fire questions. First one is obviously you're just celebrating 1 year. And so I'm assuming you haven't quite had all the time to reflect over the last year, but when you just think, first thing to come to mind, what's been the single greatest thing other than still being open? Because that is a huge accomplishment for businesses. What is the single greatest thing individually that you have either felt or noticed or seen in the first year of business?
Yeah, I just think I've gained so much confidence just like in myself and my like business ownership abilities. I feel like I kind of came in and was timid. Like I didn't really know if I deserved this or like if this was going to be good. But I definitely have grown a lot in my confidence, and I'm really grateful for that, and like just the community that we've built, and the friends that we've made and the connections. I mean, it's just been, we're so blessed, and I'm just really grateful.
Yeah, for sure. It's hard for me to not say the community, because actually before our 1 year party, I was doing some reflecting because we had our grand opening July 8th, and then we did our 1 year on June 9th. And so I was just reflecting on like how I felt leading up to the grand opening versus our 1 year, and just the people in our lives that we now call friend, or the relationships and like the foundation that we've built as a practice, is something that if you would have told me a year ago, like this is where you're going to stand and this is where you're going to be in practice, I probably would have like broken down in tears, just to be so thankful to have a community and people that rally around us and support us, just like no questions asked. And so that would definitely be the first thing. And then second would have to be just the fact that our friendship is still strong. And I was never walking into this hoping that I could just prove the naysayers wrong, particularly that like we could stay friends. But we had a lot of people in our ears. And I'll be honest, I think we walked into practice being a little bit nervous about that. And so I would say that I'm super thankful that we've, over the year, like navigated that really well, I would say, and that we still have a strong friendship. And now we have an even better relation or understanding of what it'll look like as a business partner. So those two things would come into the forefront right now.
Yeah.
That's really cool. And then my second question, and I think it's been answered within that question, at least for my point of view. So my next question is, if you were to give our listeners one tangible thing that they can take away from y'all's journey so far, like what is the one thing? And I mean, just going to what Hannah just said about, the amount of confidence you gained. I mean, if I'm listening to this and I was just thinking like, oh wait, you didn't have all the confidence in the world before you opened your business. Like what? Like I didn't have to wait for this confidence to show up. I actually had to go earn it. But
I didn't have to get an associateship for 3 years and work at the J and.
Yep. So what would you say are either one or two tangible things that if you were a student, you wish you had thought of, or someone had told you about opening your practice?
I mean, I think that it's one of those things you just have to decide that you're going to do it and put 100% of your effort in. And like I said, just continue to say yes, continue to put yourself in uncomfortable situations. And I mean, that confidence was learned, right? It's a skill in its own. So yeah, just continue to put yourself out there and like good things will come.
Yeah. Mine would be get really comfortable with making mistakes.
Mm-hmm.
If you're constantly fearful of what your next mistake is going to be, or if the current thing you're doing is a mistake or you're doing it wrong or not the most efficient way of doing things, then you're going to give yourself decision paralysis. And there is probably nothing worse in business. I don't know. But get really comfortable with doing and knowing and owning the fact that you might not be doing things the absolute best way.
Yep.
And continue to listen, even if it's to people that aren't even a business owner yet. If they're their associate or something like that, continue to listen to what they've learned and be willing to apply that, because what you're doing might not be perfect. It isn't perfect. I can guarantee you that. And know that just because you're not doing things perfect doesn't make you a failure.
Oh yeah. We've changed things thousands of times. Like it's just trial and error, honestly. Like just figure out what works for you, and what works for Zach or what works for Spencer isn't always going to work for us. So you just kind of have to take everything with a grain of salt and make it your own and have fun. Like this is your business, and like it's just so worth it, I think.
Yeah. I mean, doing something wrong doesn't mean that it's a personal failure or a character flaw. Like you're doing the best you can, and getting really, really comfortable in that ability to be uncomfortable, and then taking that and realizing that like it's not that serious. You have a really stinking cool job.
Yeah.
And you have a community of people that support you.
Mm-hmm.
And like you get to do something really, really awesome. And it doesn't have to be like stone cold serious all the time.
Yeah. Just be yourself and people will come. Like the people will come. If you love what you're doing and you're making those connections, they're gonna come into your office.
Most of the time.
Awesome. That's awesome.
So great.
Super good. Super good.
Yeah.
Cool.
Well, real quick before we wrap up, where can our listeners find y'all, whether it be social media or whatever you're willing to share with them? Let us know where we can find you.
Yeah, for sure. The easiest place is just going to Instagram and typing in Alpha and Omega Chiro. We will pull up, and we have both of our personal profiles on there as well. We're pretty frequently tagged into the pictures. We make appearances quite often on that Instagram.
Yeah.
And so you can find us both on there. And if you have any questions or just want to talk to somebody, that if you feel like you're in a similar situation as we were, we love talking to people about what it looks like to be in business and just like being a female chiropractor and all the good that comes with that. And so we would love to talk to you guys. We are sadly on our phones a whole ton and have very high screen time scores. And so we will be there and be able to respond to you. And we would love to talk to you there.
Yep.
Nice. Well, Hannah, Morgan, thank you so much for being with us today. If you guys are listening and you like this kind of content, you love what Morgan and Hannah shared, put a ring on it. If you like it, put a ring on it. And thank you so much for listening to the What Now podcast. Share this with somebody who you feel like needs to hear this. And we will see you guys next week. Peace.
Peace out. Thanks, y'all.
Thank
Bye.
you.